Ibrahim Traore, who is committed to giving the Burkinabe army all the necessary means to contain the terrorist threat and go on the offensive against the enemy to liberate the country. The President of Faso, as the Supreme Commander of the National Armed Forces, then set a new course for reorganizing and strengthening the operational capabilities of the fighting forces.
The most important reforms to note first involved revising the territorial coverage. Previously, our territorial defense organization was based on 3 military regions. This was deemed insufficient, so a reform and reorganization were quickly carried out. We went from 3 military regions to 6 military regions, 6 Gendarmerie regions, new air bases, just to name a few. We created, organized, and made operational the Special Rapid Intervention Brigade, which was established based on the Cobra units. In less than 2 years, we increased to 25 rapid intervention battalions. Along with other components, this has made the brigade highly operational as spearhead of the offensive we are currently conducting against armed terrorist groups.
In the same vein, a strategic equipment plan for the National Armed Forces was adopted by the government. This strategic plan, the result of the President's determination, will pave the way for an unprecedented strengthening of the operational capabilities of the National Armed Forces, particularly in terms of human resources, logistics, tactics, and combat techniques. None of the Army's entities were left out.
In terms of recruitment, this reorganization was accompanied by a large-scale recruitment and training program. This has made it possible to increase the number of personnel within our units and to intensify the operational theater. In terms of equipment, the Army has indeed benefited from allocations of major resources, high-tech equipment, weapon systems, and modern, effective communication systems that are suited to the current threat.
The diversification of strategic partnerships with countries such as Russia, Turkey, and China will then accelerate the acquisition of significant equipment for the benefit of the armed forces. And as soon as he came to power, Captain Ibrahim Traore demonstrated his strong determination to make up for the shortfall in equipment for the Burkinabe army. Already in December 2022, just 3 months after he came to power, the Army's capabilities were strengthened with the acquisition of armored vehicles. And this momentum will continue with the delivery of a significant batch of military equipment, including vehicles, combat weapons, and ammunition to the Ministry of Defense in January 2024.
I am officially handing over the keys to these tactical vehicles to you. Remember that we live in a predatory world. To have peace, we must wage war. So, wage war.
Today, the Army is stronger and continues to grow in power. The Army today has nothing to envy or nothing in common in terms of capability with the Army we knew in the past. Not only in terms of territorial coverage, but also in terms of personnel numbers.
In April 2024, another batch of military equipment was handed over to the Chief of the General Staff for use. This included 75 vehicles, 7 APC ambulances, 20 M53 vehicles, 20 SATCO vehicles, 20 tanker trucks, 4 armored cars, 2 armored buses, and 2 MEMSA-type APCs. In June 2024, another significant batch of military and engineering equipment was acquired for the defense and security forces fighting terrorism on the front lines. This included combat armored vehicles resistant to improvised explosive devices, weapons, ammunition, and military engineering equipment, notably excavators, truck carriers, and tankers.
So I'm symbolically handing over the keys to this equipment to you. This is part of the 2024 strategic equipment plan. Make good use of it and begin the long-awaited development of the war. If you're missing anything, come back to me and I will return to the people.
What has been acquired? In any case, maybe the elders, the veterans will say it, has never been seen before in this army. As for me, I'm in logistics, so I know what this is worth. This has never been seen before in this army.
The Air Force, which for a long time was grounded, is about to take off under the leadership of the Supreme Commander of the National Armed Forces, Captain Ibrahim Traore. Mastery and control of the skies are essential factors for victory against terrorist leaders and for building a strong and resilient army. The acquisition of helicopters for troop transport and humanitarian missions, as well as reconnaissance aircraft, combat helicopters and strike drones in March 2023 is part of this vision of the head of state. A significant batch of aerial vehicles, including a dozen drones mainly consisting of Bayraktar TB2 and Bayraktar Akinci models, has also been acquired, thereby expanding the fleet, which can now intervene in very short time frames and provide continuous surveillance of the national territory.
Since President Traore came to power, the Air Force has held a prominent place in the Armed Forces equipment plan. We have received combat aircraft. We have received new aircraft dedicated to intelligence gathering. We have received maneuver aircraft, and we have received in virtually every category of combat new assets that allow us to meet the needs of the population and to fight against terrorism. And to deploy these resources, we have also benefited from the opening of 2 new air bases, which allow us to have greater flexibility in the field, to be closer to the areas of operations, and to have greater capacity to meet the needs and expectations placed on an Air Force in the field. And to put all of this into action, it was necessary for us to be reinforced in terms of personnel, and this was also addressed through recruitment. The members of the army were mainly trained abroad, which did not allow us to have sufficient numbers. With the President's leadership, we now have the ability to train our personnel locally here through the creation of our own Air Force schools. Some of these schools are already operational, while others are still being established. But this gives us a real capacity to provide training that meets our needs, training that produces personnel with the skills we truly require on the ground, here and now.
The efforts in equipment have also made it possible to significantly strengthen the units of the National Gendarmerie and the National Police. Today, these internal security forces have the necessary resources to fully play their role in the defense and security of the national territory.
Over the 2 years in question, specifically from October 2022 to October 2024, the Gendarmerie has benefited from 2 regular recruitment drives. There was also a special recruitment of 3,000 personnel, which has therefore increased the Gendarmerie's numbers. In terms of logistics, we have also received a number of resources which can be estimated at more than 200 vehicles of all types. For maintenance and upkeep, we have also received a budget of 1.5 billion for spare parts. Before, we had vehicles that you had to push to get started. Today, as I speak to you, when you see a Gendarmerie vehicle, it's truly a quality vehicle. So these are resource acquisitions that allow the Gendarmerie to work efficiently. In terms of infrastructure, we received a budget of about 11 billion CFA francs for the construction and development of facilities we didn't have before, as well as for the renovation of existing infrastructure that had become somewhat dilapidated. Most of the Gendarmerie brigades were, I would say, built out in the open and operated without any fencing. Only the trees serve to mark the boundaries of the areas assigned to the brigades. Today, we thank the authorities for making this a priority by fencing off almost all of the Gendarmerie brigades.
From the moment the president called, every police officer answered the call of duty. The entire institution answered the call of the nation and stood together with all the other branches of the defense and security forces, committing themselves to every theater of operation. The results speak for themselves. Terrorism. All these units are deployed across the country alongside other defense and security forces, as well as volunteers for the defense of the nation. There is also the restructuring of the National Police Intervention Unit, which you know as an elite unit that has now been transformed into a group. There is also the creation of the National Police Operations Center. In terms of recruitment, thousands of police officers have been hired. Since Captain Ibrahim Traore took office, in 2 years, we have seen the recruitment of more than 4,000 police officers. So that's a record number. Many infrastructures have been built and others renovated since Captain Ibrahim Traore's arrival. In terms of training, we have witnessed a major strengthening of police skills through various types of training, including intensive and specialized courses. At one point, there were petty squabbles over certain issues concerning the police. With the arrival of Captain Ibrahim Traore, all of that has disappeared. We have seen a strengthening, a tightening of unity. The police forces have joined together with all the other components of the defense and security forces, as well as with the volunteers for the defense of the homeland. And today, when you go out into the field, you can no longer tell the difference between the various components. People operate in unity of action, and it is truly in the spirit of brotherhood in arms that things are happening on the ground. After 2 years, everything the police have acquired in terms of logistics for the fight against terrorism, honestly, is a figure that is truly impressive. There used to be this petty squabble over arming the police. Some people thought that the police were not entitled to a certain type of weapon. So the police officers were deployed, but without the necessary means to ensure either their own safety or the safety of the population. It wasn't until Captain Ibrahim Traore arrived that all the rules were broken. The National Police now have practically every category of weapon. There have been many acquisitions of weapons, both individual and collective arms. There have also been acquisitions of numerous pieces of individual protective equipment as well as collective protective gear. There have been acquisitions of new specialized equipment. I'm talking about drones, IED detectors. These are things we were not familiar with in the past. There have also been acquisitions of numerous new means of communication, which allow units in the field to be fully operational. There have also been acquisitions of armored vehicles CS, armored vehicles CME, armored vehicles, light vehicles, tricycles, and countless motorcycles. This is truly a revolution. I said a revolution, not just simple changes.
The National Brigade of Firefighters, the BNSP, will also strengthen and organize itself to contribute to the reconquest of the territory. The combat units of the firefighters have thus traded their characteristic uniforms to join forces with the other branches of the army in the fight against the terrorist Hydra, embodying their motto, save or perish the nation. Since the crisis our country has been experiencing, the units of the National Brigade of Firefighters have contributed in various parts of the territory to the return of peace and the recapture of certain localities. The resources available to the National Brigade of Firefighters are the same as those available to the National Armed Forces in general. And so all our personnel deployed in the field, whether they are in fully constituted brigade units or within other combat unit structures, receive support and assistance from the service providers of the National Armed Forces. It must be clearly acknowledged that there has been a leap, a significant leap in terms of capability. Capability in terms of intervention on the one hand, but also in terms of human resources. There has been a significant increase in personnel within the brigade, both to be able to respond to the operational defense of the territory as part of the reconquest of the national territory, and also to fulfill our public service duties in terms of emergency response and firefighting. Since 2023-2024, we have benefited from the creation of specialized units and units within the brigade. We have also benefited from the opening and operationalization of fire and rescue companies in cities, especially in the administrative regional capitals that did not previously have a fire station. These are major efforts that have been made precisely to bring emergency services closer to the population. This is, in turn, an adaptation of the system. This adaptation of the system
in terms of coverage has led to the creation of fire brigades as well as fire and rescue companies. The authorities have worked to ensure a network that allows firefighters to be available to intervene for the benefit of the population.
Resources acquired thanks to the various contributions of Burkinabe citizens who are also determined to wage the war. In 2 years, more than $1 billion, or over 600 billion CFA francs, have been raised for the acquisition of military equipment, according to the Ministry of Economy and Finance.
The National Armed Forces have never been so well equipped since their creation, as they have been in these past 2 years. We now have high performance, state-of-the-art equipment. For example, I would mention the strategic drones we have, the combat and transport helicopters that we have been able to acquire as part of these reforms, the armored vehicles for logistical transport, the armored personnel carriers, the battle tanks, the combat vehicles for military engineering, as well as the construction equipment that the Military Engineering Corps has just received. All of this will contribute to much greater mobility for our national armed forces, much greater operational capability, and much more boldness. Because when our troops are well equipped, it's important to understand that it also boosts their morale and makes them much more daring in carrying out offensive action.
In addition to acquiring equipment for the army, the head of state has launched a vast program to reorganize the national armed forces. The territory needs to be covered in order to ensure greater responsiveness and effectiveness on the ground. The first challenge of this reorganization is to strengthen the various army units with more human resources. An unprecedented recruitment drive has therefore been launched for the benefit of all branches of the army.
Our countries were on life support, but recruitment was really at a minimum. When we say that the entire army recruited 1,000 people in a year, it was often complicated, and sometimes it dropped to 500, not even counting those who retired. Within the different branches of the armed forces, there's also been a considerable increase in recruitment. If in a single year we managed to recruit 10,000 soldiers, that's something to be commended. We have taken on challenges that we are currently undertaking to try to better train this personnel, better supervise them so they can handle anything that arises for us, whether in terms of operations or actions to be carried out in the field.
Strengthening human resources and improving equipment are extremely important factors. This is what we call the morale of the soldier. These pieces of equipment and reinforcements in personnel have boosted our men. And thanks to that, we have been able to embark on reclaiming our territory. We have succeeded in liberating certain areas of our country. We have enabled the return of many people who had been displaced, who have now gone back to their places of origin, and who have even managed this year to produce and farm. We have managed to reopen more than 1,000 schools that have been closed. So all these victories and all these reconquests are thanks to the effort made by the Burkina people who agreed to invest and contribute to the war effort so that all this VDP recruitment can take place.
The massive commitment of the Burkina people, with more than 90,000 joining the ranks of the volunteers for the defense of the homeland, determined to make the volunteers reliable allies in the defense of the nation. And the VDPs are bravely fighting alongside their brothers in arms.
The living and support conditions of the VDPs have seen some improvements since January 2024.
What is it? Ordine.
Under the
Milk is not coming
leadership
out.
of His Excellency,
There's no milk now.
the VDP's operational bonuses have increased from 60,000 to 80,000 francs. And although this is still not enough, it allows the VDPs to continue fighting on the ground and also boosts their morale. No VDP goes to the theater of operations without their weapon. And as a veteran, compared to what I saw before and what I see today, a great step forward has been made. Everything is being done so that in a short time, the National Armed Forces and the Internal Security Forces will be at their best.
I have 34 years of service. When I look back, I can say that we have come a very long way. With the resources provided by the people and the state, we are in the process of rebuilding ourselves. We are gaining strength. The Burkina Republic has a bright future, a future with a history that will be crowned with prestige and glory.
Over these past 2 years, under the leadership of the President of Faso, His Excellency Captain Ibrahim Traore, we have all witnessed a profound transformation of the National Armed Forces, marked by a strengthening of our capability and increase in personnel, an increase in logistical resources, in weaponry, as well as a restructuring and redeployment of units that now cover the national territory more effectively. And the other aspect is, above all the air dimensions, today, the National Armed Forces are equipped with combat aircraft. They are equipped with aerial vehicles that make it possible not only to gather intelligence on the ground, but also to carry out observation missions and missions to guide ground troops, thereby increasing the effectiveness of combat.
Today, more than ever, beyond the victories it is achieving over armed terrorist groups, the Burkina Army, through its transformation, is instilling a sense of pride among Burkinabe citizens. In strength and sovereignty of a nation are also tied to the power of its army. Captain Ibrahim Traore has made it his mission to continuously strengthen the operational capabilities of the National Armed Forces. Strength and sovereignty of a nation are also tied to the power of its army. Captain Ibrahim Traore has made it his mission to continuously strengthen the operational capabilities of the National Armed Forces.
Today, the army is much better equipped than it has ever been. But we see that this is nothing. The equipment will come 10 times, many times more advanced than what we have now. We will continue to recruit in order to have a strong army, because independence, sovereignty, as long as you don't have a strong army, you cannot stand on your own.